afternoon. A warm welcome to the Pope Francis Gallery in Boileau Hall, Catholic Studies Center here at St. Louis University. This beautiful space houses the College of Philosophy and Letters and our Catholic Studies academic and co-curricular programs. My name is Randy Rosenberg. I'm the Dean of the College of Philosophy and Letters, and on behalf of our faculty and staff, I'm delighted to welcome you to our second panel on artificial intelligence and Catholic social teaching. It is a special pleasure to introduce Dr. Gregory Beabout, professor in the Department of Philosophy and current holder of the Romano Guardini Chair in Catholic Thought and Culture in the College of Philosophy and Letters. Dr. Beabout's teaching and scholarship span ethics, Kierkegaard, personalism, MacIntyre, and Catholic social thought. For decades, Greg has been a mentor and a guide to countless students, embodying, at least I would hold, philosophy as a way of life. Rigorous in thought, but always attentive to how ideas shape our lives in meaningful and holistic ways. For so many, Greg is a trusted colleague, an inspiring teacher, a devoted friend, and an invaluable mentor. This afternoon, we are especially grateful to Greg in his capacity as Guardini Chair for his creativity and tireless work in shaping this important and ongoing interdisciplinary series on AI and its intersection with Catholic social teaching. I introduce to you Dr. Beabout.
Thanks, Randy, for those kind words. This monthly panel series is inspired by the new Pope. By taking the name Leo, he signaled that the Church would face today's transformative technologies, including generative AI, with the same courage and clarity with which Pope Leo XIII, the founder of modern Catholic social teaching, addressed social challenges during the period of the First Industrial Revolution. At the end of the 19th century, Pope Leo XIII promulgated the important encyclical letter Rerum Novarum on the condition of the working class. Before we begin, I want to say a word about SLU's Catholic Studies Center, and to extend, as Dean Rosenberg said, a warm welcome, especially to anyone new to this space. A lot of the SLU students who spend time here describe this place as feeling like a home away from home. There's a family feel here. The Second Vatican Council describes the family as a school of deeper humanity, because in a family, so much of life is integrated. I think of my parents, who had so many roles as our teachers, but also as healthcare providers, policymakers, police officers, nutritionists, business managers, maintenance staff, and so forth. A home is where one first learns to work and to worship, to play and to pray, where one's conscience is first formed, where one learns to get along with others while developing the ability to give of oneself and grow in the virtues of love and self-sacrifice. A place where people encounter others while practicing the fundamental aspects of human interaction while growing emotionally and spiritually in ways integral to becoming fully realized as human beings, pursuing the local common good and pursuing a more just and peaceful world. This is a building where the life of study is integrated with social life and the life of faith. There are classroom spaces here, office spaces for faculty and our chaplain, study spaces, a lot of programming that stems from here, retreats, Bible studies, service activities in nearby neighborhoods and beyond, and much more. 2 days ago, on Saturday night, this room was filled, buzzing with teams participating in a trivia night. Now, if you're not from St. Louis, you should know that St. Louis Catholic parishes, it's standard on Saturday night to have trivia nights as a form of Saturday night social life. Later tonight in this space, there will be confessions, rosary in the chapel, and then Mass, where there will be an overflow gathering spilling into this space. And after Mass, a home-cooked meal will be served in this space this evening by a dedicated group of volunteers, mostly SLU alums. And then after dinner, there's typically an activity. The activity this evening is our new chaplain, Father Mark Kramer, SJ, will be giving a talk in which he'll tell the story of how he discerned his vocation. My hunch is that although this is a very busy and active place, a lot of people at SLU are not aware of all the programs and activity going on here, so welcome. Each month during the current academic year, we're holding a panel like this with faculty, administrators, students, and friends of SLU reflecting together on the impact of artificial intelligence. Last month, in anticipation of Labor Day, we had a panel reflecting on AI and its impact on the world of work, with panelists from philosophy, economics, industrial organizational psychology, computer science, physical therapy, and finance. A recording of that panel is available online, and this panel will be recorded. It's being recorded as well, and it will be made available online also. Each month this year, another panel will focus on an aspect of AI, such as next month, its impact on healthcare, and then the month after that, on care for our common home, and then on warfare and global peace, and so forth each month this academic year. The goal of the series is to promote integration and interdisciplinary dialogue on an important topic. So I'm very grateful to Rosenberg and to this wonderful group of panelists. I mean, what a fantastic group we've got here. Tom Finan, right, from history. Tom is so cool that they make documentary movies. They made a documentary movie about him. Tom, I just had dinner the other night with Don Parker. You know?
Yeah, he's right over there.
Oh, there's Don right there.
Yeah.
And, right, so Don one summer went with Tom to
Three
Ireland,
times.
right?
3 times.
To dig up a castle from a bog in Ireland. And who knows, Tom can talk about it. Anyway, and Grace is not just a regular here at Catholic Studies, she's the president of the Student Government Association. Everyone here is looking forward to hearing from our new president, Dr. Fazer, and the new dean of the business school is going to tell us, right, about some of the exciting things they're doing at the Chaffetz School with AI. And then in the School of Education, Father Thomas from Uganda will help broaden our perspective. And I'm especially looking forward to hearing from my friend, Dr. Jen Sanders from Catholic Studies, who's new in her role this year as Director of Catholic Studies at SLU. So let's get started. I give the floor to Dr. Thomas Finan.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. So 2.5 years ago, I was teaching Origins of the Modern World when I first heard about ChatGPT. Out of curiosity, I pulled it up in a class, in that class, and at first the answers seemed uneven, sometimes funny. Not knowing the difference between the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire was kind of problematic in a Western Civ course. But then one student asked it a very serious organic chemistry question, and it nailed it. And this was, what year was that? 22, right? And the room actually fell silent because they were actually kind of stunned. Because at this point, most students hadn't really played with it very much yet. Now that was the moment when I realized that this really isn't a gadget or a passing trend. And in fact, this is a shift in how knowledge would be accessed and experienced. And since then, as a Jesuit educator, my question has been very simple. How do we help students live in this world where this is coming into being? So artificial intelligence isn't coming to higher education, it's already here. It's writing student papers, it's summarizing research, generating lesson plans, doing book reviews, analyzing data, writing articles and books and stuff. Some colleagues will say, well, it doesn't apply to my field. But I think the truth is, if you think this is temporary, you're probably a little fooling yourself. These tools are here to stay. And as one observer, Ethan Mollick at the Wharton School of Business at Penn said, the last AI that you used is probably the worst AI you will ever use. In other words, it gets better, it's advancing. And that has been the case over the last 3 years. So what do we do? Well, when you get lost in a forest, don't panic, right? That's the first thing. Jesuit education is not about retreating from the world, but about discerning within it. And so that means, for me, I guess, what does this technology do to us? What do we do with it? And in other words, how do we form young people to be better people as they leave our university with the knowledge of what AI is going to mean in the world that they enter? Now, in keeping with Pope Leo's comments, Father Arturo Sosa, General of the Society of Jesus, in his address to the International Association of Jesuit Universities this year, called AI a spiritual, anthropological, and educational challenge. The university, he says, not just a site of knowledge production, but of identity formation. And identity formation now includes how we think, write, and act in a world mediated by machines. And so, in one sense, another question becomes, are we capable of educating individuals who can navigate this world with wisdom and responsibility? Now, the Jesuit Father Walter Ong helps us to see what is actually at stake with this question. He taught that technologies are not exterior aids, but interior transformations of consciousness. Literacy itself transformed consciousness. AI generates fluency without presence, voice without memory, language without self. So for students, that means a polished essay may no longer reflect the struggle, growth, or engagement that many of us grew up with. The task is not to resist the medium, but to form minds aware of what it does to us. So yes, AI is transforming the way we think and approach information, just as did the printing press, telescope, internet, and Wikipedia. So how do we teach in this new tension? Well, in my classroom, I don't ban AI. I ask students to use it, and then we critique it. We generate summaries, critiques, poetry, and then we ask what's missing, what's flattened, what's distorted. That conversation is where formation can happen. We spend more time on process, revision, annotation, because struggle is where meaning can emerge. Even assessments for me have changed. Take-home exams make no sense anymore. In-person work, though harder, becomes a moment where thinking and presence must coexist. And even in my archaeological field work, we compare machine-aided interpretations to the messy work of human observation. Students can see the limits of automation. They discover that meaning doesn't arise from fluency, it arises from presence and from context. This is discernment, not denial. Denial in this case is not a shield, it's a liability. Billions and billions of dollars are being poured into AI development as we sit here. And to me, actually, what is most concerning is what we might call the AI arms race that may decide whether a repressive artificial intelligence hits artificial general intelligence before a Western model. That's a very, very significant issue. We, however, are faced with a different concern, and that is, how do we respond? Jesuit education chooses engagement with hope and rigor, not avoidance and alarm. So we are actually well prepared to deal with this. The response is clear. We form students who understand that integrity is not just about citations. It's about presence. It's about responsibility. We model transparency in our own use of AI. Faculty need to begin that process as well, being transparent when they actually use AI for a classroom setting. And we must accompany one another through a transformation that is not neutral, but profoundly human in consequences. And I don't know what it'll look like in 5 or 10 years. I do know that over the last 2 years, it has moved a lot quicker than I think people anticipated. But I know this, we're not serving our students or our mission by pretending it isn't happening. Our task is to help them remain fully human, even in a world that is increasingly generated. Thanks.
Alrighty, hello everyone. My name is Grace LaPiccolo. I serve as student body here at SLU, but I'm also a senior. I'm double majoring in bioethics and Catholic studies, and then I'm applying to law school right now, hopefully pursuing health and disability law. I was intrigued when I was asked to reflect on this encyclical and honestly felt a little underqualified to be sitting up here. What would I, a senior in college, offer to this conversation that any of these experts in their respective fields sitting beside me would not say? As I read through this document, I realized that I had the perspective of a student who has the ability to replace my own thoughts with AI's thoughts in almost every single class I am in. And I wish that I could tell you that the professors always knew when something is written using generative AI, but I really do not think that they do. Sorry. I know many people cruise through reflections, papers, assignments, and so on with the use of generative AI. My generation moves fast, and we pack our schedules in order to stay busy and stack our resumes for grad school or the working world that comes next. And so using AI, especially when it is so normalized in our world, feels like the simple solution to get ahead or even just keep up sometimes. But I challenge you, why? Why pursue a degree that you would rather ask ChatGPT to learn about rather than you? Why just go through the motions when the things we learn in classes will directly or indirectly impact our future careers at this point? Is it because it is just convenient to not have to do your work? It saves time, it allows you more time, but more time for what? To pursue internships, clubs, passions, relationships, mental health, or other classwork, or to just rest? Those are not bad things in themselves. In fact, the church acknowledges that what is new should not be rejected outright. But I challenge you to reflect on what the purpose of higher education is at its core. This encyclical says that education is never a mere process of passing on facts and intellectual skills. Rather, it aims to contribute to the person's holistic formation in its various aspects, intellectual, cultural, spiritual, etc., including, for example, community life and relations within the academic community, in keeping with the nature of the dignity of the human person. If we're honest, so many students often think of education as just passing of facts and skills. AI feeds right into that mindset. It can give us the facts and it can produce the skills that we are asked to learn. But what it cannot do is form us as a whole person. It cannot form our character, our patience, our capacity for dialogue, our sense of community. And those are the things that education, especially a Catholic education, is supposed to cultivate. This text echoes this when it warns that we must break the idea of education, which holds that educating means filling one's head with ideas. Educating is taking a risk in the tension between the mind, the heart, and the hands. That line. Educating is taking a risk in the tension between the mind, the heart, and the hands. That's probably my favorite line in this entire document because I think it's really true. Real education always involves risk. It asks us to be vulnerable and to admit when we don't know something, to wrestle with questions that don't have easy answers. It asks us to bring our whole selves, not just our intellects, but our emotions and our values and our actions into the classroom and beyond into our future careers. AI attempts to bypass this risk. It can give you a polished answer without the struggle. But if education is about formation, then the struggle itself is actually what shapes us as students. To learn only with AI in mind is incomplete. To learn only with the hands is just shallow. To learn only with the heart is lacking grounding. But when all three are brought together, mind, heart, and hands, then education truly forms us into the people who can seek the truth and serve the world. But I also want to be clear. The encyclical does not call us to reject what is new outright, and neither do I. AI does have good and constructive uses in education when it is placed in the right context. As the text puts it, if used in prudent manner within the context of an existing teacher-to-student relationship and ordered to the authentic goals of education, AI can become a valuable educational resource. I've seen this in my own classes. AI can help me brainstorm when I'm feeling stuck on a topic. It can explain a complex concept in a simpler way or offer practice problems with instant feedback. For students who might not have the access to tutors or extra resources, AI can level the playing field and support their learning. In the right balance, it can even free up time for professors to spend less time on grading and repetitive tasks and more on formation, dialogue, and mentorship with their students. So the question is not whether AI can help us. It clearly can. But whether we are using it in a way that deepens our education or in a way that weakens it. Another part of this text reminds us that at the center of this work of forming the whole human person is the indispensable relationship between teacher and student. The physical presence of a teacher creates a relational dynamic that AI could not replicate. That has been my experience here at SLU. The classes that shaped me most and are shaping me the most are ones where I could not get by with summaries, but the ones where professors challenged me, mentored me, and cared for me as a person. AI can generate information, but it cannot inspire me or look me in the eye or hold me accountable for a paper that I need to do to help me learn. This matters not only for students today, but for our vocations as we're preparing for tomorrow. I want to practice health and disability law. AI may help me find a case quickly or organize the information, but it will never sit with a person and hear their struggle. It will never teach me how to see the dignity of a client with a disability in a world that sees them as an inconvenience. If I let AI replace my formation now, I will not be ready to serve others later in my career. That is what the encyclical insists. It says that an essential part of education is forming the intellect to reason well in all matters, to reach out towards truth and to fully grasp it. That is the work that us as students work by risking bypassing all of this when we settle for shortcuts like using generative AI in our assignments. So as I sit here before you, not as an expert in any of these fields, but as a student, my hope is simple, that we do not let convenience rob us from our formation during these 4 years. AI can assist us, yes. It can help us learn more efficiently, even creatively, but it cannot take the risk of learning away from us. It cannot replace the professors who challenge us, the classmates who shape us, or the struggles that strengthen us. If education is truly about the mind, the heart, and the hands, then AI can be a tool for the mind, but it cannot live for us with heart, nor act with us for our hands. That work is up to us. As students and professors at a university and as a church, the challenge is not to reject the new, but to use it wisely, to let it serve the quest for truth without short-circuiting the very formation that makes us capable of living it out. Because in the end, the quest for truth cannot be outsourced, and our formation cannot be automated. Thank you.
So it's a wonderful thing when you feel like one of your own students is a hard act to follow. So beautifully done. Delighted to be part of this panel. Thank you, Greg, for the invitation. As you might imagine, as a university president, I spend a fair bit of time thinking about the confidence of the public about higher education and our legitimacy as institutions in both teaching and research. And so that was on my mind as I read the note. And so I'm going to focus on, or at least take as a point of departure, a sentence in paragraph 40 of the note that reads, "Where human freedom allows for the possibility of choosing what is wrong, the moral evaluation of the technology will need to take into account how it is directed and used." And what I want to focus on there is the question of how. How do we undertake such a moral evaluation? Is this about individuals examining their conscience with the philosophical and theological guidance that's offered here, or is this a matter of collective action? And as I think if you read the note, and it makes clear mostly by implication, not so much directly, that we're talking about collective action. It assigns responsibility for AI governance to, quote, all levels of society, civil society, corporations, institutions, governments, and international organizations, and it invokes the principle of subsidiarity in doing so. It calls for regulatory frameworks to ensure accountability, transparency, privacy, and human control, situating ethics in the realm of policy and law. It frames the ethics of AI and science and technology generally as something requiring societal dialogue. It notes that technologies embed the worldviews of developers, owners, users, and regulators, and can shape social power relations. All of this discussion of common good, subsidiarity, regulation, and dialogue clearly places ethical decisions, the matter of moral evaluation of the R&D of AI within participatory democratic processes. So what I want to propose as a challenge and an opportunity for us at SLU is this. What guidance might we offer on the question of how to engage in truly democratic deliberation of the kind of world we would wish to inhabit, and how work on the scientific and technological frontier, and specifically AI in this case, can help us build that world? And surely as a Jesuit institution of higher education, and more generally a faith-based institution, we should be well suited to offering this guidance. And note that I'm framing this question so that it is not strictly contingent on an assumed trajectory of AI research and development. What I'm doing is placing moral and ethical questions first and science second. This may seem obvious, but it's actually a pretty complicated problem. And in fact, the scientific research community isn't very good at understanding it or approaching it. In fact, we're more comfortable carefully circumscribing democratic deliberation in the domain of science. And I want to use an example to explain what I mean by that. And that is from the case of molecular biology, and specifically the famous 1975 meeting of leading molecular biologists at the Asilomar Conference Center in California. Some of you may know about this. There's an excellent paper on this in the January 31st issue of Science by Benjamin Hurlbut, who's at Arizona State University, and that's what I'm drawing on here, but I'm using it principally as a major example of how we're most comfortable within science of tackling the question of ethics. So some of you may be aware that Asilomar has become shorthand reference for both a location and an approach or philosophy of scientific ethical self-regulation. The legacy of the 1975 meeting has been significant, not just in the regulation of research on recombinant DNA, which was its nominal focus, but in establishing a model of scientific self-regulation that still remains dominant today. Scientists at the meeting were concerned that recombinant DNA experiments might generate dangerous pathogens. The question was how to balance the risks and rewards of that research. They were also concerned by the potential of overreaction by the public to such risks, since the public lacks scientific expertise, which might lead to the excessive regulation that would then slow down research needlessly and limit the potential benefits for society. All this should sound similar to the conversation about AI today. So scientists came to the agreement that they would take care to identify what's at stake in the research. They would flag when those issues or risks merit public attention and public democratic assessment of those risks. And then they would agree to pause work under agreed ethical guidelines for such work until such assessments could be conducted. The national academies and scientific societies would then be active collaborators with government in exploring those risks and implications before permitting controversial research to proceed. There are a lot of positives in this model, and it was a celebrated one. Well-intentioned, but it was also intended to maintain control within the domain of science. So what was the effect of this approach? It circumscribed the issues in play within scientists' domain of expertise. The focus became the accessible risks of immediate next steps in the conduct of research in the given domain. This is a very common framing of much of the ethical and governance dialogue about AI. Pull up almost any video on AI governance and its implications for democracy, and it will take the technology itself as its point of departure. It crowded out democratic deliberation of alternative visions of the good, alternative technological futures, until changing course became difficult because technology is developed, IP is acquired, companies are formed, capital is invested. So essentially, scientists put themselves in the position of both framing the problems and the solutions. This is what Hurlbut calls science first, ethics later paradigm. And the note actually inadvertently reinforces this same perspective. Paragraph 4, as AI advances rapidly toward ever greater achievements, it is critically important to consider its anthropological and ethical implications. Sounds good, but by whose agreement and on whose authority has AI been advancing? By whose agreement and on whose authority have public resources been expended to facilitate that advance? In paragraph 46, while responsibility for the ethical use of AI systems starts with those who develop, produce, manage, and oversee such systems, it is also shared by those who use them. Sounds reasonable, but the point of departure are the experts. So, what's the way forward? We need to imagine, in my view, technological progress as first a democratic project of collective moral imagination. Start with the meaning of being human and progress from there into what AI serves that meaning. So again, I go back to my challenge for SLU. Are we in a position to help provide the guidance that would support that kind of democratic deliberation? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackson Nickerson, Dean of the Business School, and the thread that was woven by the president is going to be seen in what I want to share with you. I want to begin by telling you, as a 6-year-old entering the 2nd grade, I read this book. It's called A History of Flight, and St. Louis is featured in it, by the way. Little did I know that reading this book was an act of formation that would ultimately lead me to be a participant in and a student of innovation my entire life. First as an engineer at NASA, and later as a business school professor. For 20 years, I taught a course on the strategic management of innovation, from which 3 lessons for the Antiqua et Nova can be drawn. Let me share them with you. The first lesson is that those organizations that participate early in a technology end up setting the paradigm. They set the standards, which President Faeser spoke about. For example, you can go back to the Bell Corporation, IBM, or even OpenAI. These organizations, along with other early participants, are the ones that set the standard and the paradigm for how technologies will be used ethically. The Antiqua et Nova calls us to participate in this paradigm and in setting the standards. The second lesson comes from Mies van der Rohe, who is credited with the saying, "The devil's in the details." The reality is that the saying originated as God is in the details. And it describes that diligence and attention to detail are where God and success can be found in innovation, something I'll come back to. The third lesson comes from Teddy Roosevelt at a 1910 speech at the Sorbonne in Paris. It was called "The Man in the Arena," and I'm going to read it to you. It's rather short. "It is not the critic who counts, not the individual who points out how the strong person stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends themselves in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if they fail, at least fail while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. The Antiqua et Nova, in my view, is a call to action, to be in the arena, to find God in striving to develop the details the right way, and to become a player early in the technology or its application and development, so as to influence the structuring of the paradigm and getting the standards right. Is there a better place to take such actions than a Jesuit institution like St. Louis University? At the Chaffetz School of Business, we have jumped into the arena in several ways. I'll describe one now, and maybe during our question and answers I can talk about other ways. One of these ways is the implementation of an AI enterprise orchestration platform to change the way we teach and students learn. We are only the third business school in the world that I can find that is doing so, and our approach is unique. The other two are London Business School and UCLA, a pretty good company, I think. In our system, we will ask students to do their homework in this cyber-secure and confidential environment. Students can reach out through the environment and engage things like Claude or ChatGPT and pull that information back in as part of their homework. Yet all AI interactions, student edits, and added nuances are recorded by the system. In essence, the platform records their entire path of critical thinking, which then can be automatically assessed through faculty-created rubrics. We went through trials last week, and it works marvelously well. And because of the rubrics, you eliminate biases. Ultimately, the faculty remain responsible for determining the grades, but they have this assist in doing the assessment. The use of AI provides near immediate feedback for students, which helps them learn. It allows faculty to identify who is thinking critically, and where students may be missing a Lego block of knowledge, or where such blocks may have been snapped together and assembled in a rather ineffective way. What it does is allow faculty to save time in one area and reallocate that time, to shift their time to focus on those students who need more support. Basically, it puts walking with the students first. This enterprise platform is a way to ensure that AI complements teaching and learning rather than substitute for them. We fully anticipate that the use of the platform is going to accelerate learning and change and accelerate teaching. Not necessarily in a deep way, although we expect that, also in a broader way. I'll give you a simple example. We expect students to run into a business issue and formulate it from every different perspective, even though they're in a finance class. If you can formulate a situation holistically, then go in to solve one part of it, you become more appreciative of the interconnections, the interdependencies among the whole, where presently we educate students by snipping those interdependencies and focusing narrowly on the partial. The Chaffetz School of Business is in the arena. We are striving to find God in these details. We desire to be in the position to shape the paradigm and the standards for how AI will be used in business schools around the world. In fact, we're partnering with the company that provides this software to customize it and have them sell it as the Chaffetz implementation as a way to signify the development that it has gone through. We are innovating. Little did I know at 6 years of age I'd be engaged in formation. Well, now at 60, the story's a bit different. The Chaffetz Business School is heeding the call of the Antiqua et Nova. We're taking it as it is. and trying to encourage student and faculty formation so that instead of threatening humanity, AI will serve it and advance our becoming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. My reflections about ethical use of AI in higher education, cultivating wisdom, human dignity, and the holistic formation. I'll begin with two questions. What is the purpose of education when machines can process information faster than we ever could? How can Catholic higher education form students not only for employability or career prospects, but also for wisdom, dignity, and holiness? Education is never about passing on knowledge or skills. At its heart, it's about shaping the whole person, mind, spirit, body, and soul, the cura personalis, ordered towards truth, community, and the common good. Using the words of Pope Francis, we are not living an era of change, but a change of era. And he's right, in fact. Artificial intelligence challenges us to ask whether does technology strengthen or weaken the very mission of Catholic higher education. The Church, as articulated in Antiqua Nova, paragraph 60, reminds us that teachers are not merely content providers. They are moral and intellectual guides. To reduce education to mere transmission of data is to undermine its deeper telos, the final end of education. And that is the integral formation of the whole person. True formation requires authentic relationships grounded in empathy, solidarity, and care for the flourishing of others. And in this regard, the Christian humanist tradition provides us an instructive framework for understanding the integration of faith, reason, and human dignity in education and practice. The Greeks spoke of the paideia, the cultivation of the whole person, the intellect, the will, and the senses ordered toward wisdom and virtue. And at the highest level of the virtues lies the intellect, and that is, we are created in the Imago Dei, the image of God, endowed with freedom to choose right and bad, to reason out, called to align both intellect and will with the divine. Then the question remains vital for universities today as we wrestle with this very meaning of intelligence. What is freedom? What is reason? What is intellect? And what is will? Is it simply cognitive functions? Is it constructive dimensions of the human person that reflect the divine? Catholic philosophy and theology safeguard this truth by providing a metaphysical balance that affirms the inseparability of faith and reason. Those two things go on like wings, as John Paul II says. When we go back to Aristotle and Aquinas, they illuminate this further through their distinction between ratio and intellectus. Ratio refers to the analytical reasoning, breaking down things, categorizing things, processing data, much like as algorithms perform. But intellectus, however, transcends analysis. It is the capacity to wonder, to synthesize, to discern between good and evil, to see with the eyes of the mind. And those the eyes of the mind in the Catholic faith is the eyes of our souls. Machines cannot do this. They can process, but they do not understand the eyes of the mind. And for this reason, we must be clear that artificial intelligence is not intelligence in the human sense. I can close my premise by saying that if it is artificial, that intelligence is artificial, period. Let us now turn to wisdom. Wisdom is not the same as formation, dear friends. Formation is about discernment, humility, and contemplation. It means recognizing the limits of our knowledge and remaining open to mystery. AI can calculate faster than us, but it cannot pause in wonder. It cannot love, and without love, it cannot forgive. It cannot suffer, and without suffering, it cannot know how to keep secrets. AI cannot hope. It cannot stand in awe before beauty and mystery. These uniquely human capacities are what make us created in the image of God, reflecting God who is love. Catholic higher education is not only centered with wisdom, it's also about faith. Faith is not manufactured, but faith is given as a gift, and it is the gift of the Holy Spirit within us. Institutions of higher learning, as nurturing mothers, Alma Mater, prepare the soil of this gift of the Holy Spirit, helping students open themselves to grace. As St. John Paul II reminds us, faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit raises to contemplation of truth. In this new era of artificial intelligence, cultivating openness to transcendence is more than ever. And at the same time, the Church has long affirmed technology as part of human vocation, as Pope Benedict XVI in Caritas in Veritate reminds us that technology is uniquely human. It expresses our participation in God's command to till and keep the garden. Development of tools is good when they serve human dignity and promote the common good. Thus, the question is not whether we should use AI, but the question is rather, how can we use it responsibly as a tool at the service of persons and communities? In the field of education, my interests align with the arts, especially music. Music helps us to transcend to the realms of our inner selves. AI can assist an instrument to extend their thinking, and it never replaces it. AI cannot and will not replace like music and performances. In-person instruction and authentic human interaction remain of paramount importance to the education process. For students, form powerful bonds with their teachers and mentors as role models. To be specific, in education, especially like music pedagogy, is never replaceable. Nothing can never replace the experience of sitting next to a teacher in a lesson, having a good sound modeled for the students, catching the smallest nuances of how a student is holding an instrument, what their sitting posture is to get out the good sound of the music, their posture while singing. Teachers bring not only technical expertise, but also human presence that comforts, guides, encourages, inspires. They are cheerful leaders. They discipline, they motivate, they lead, they draw upon their lived experiences, their talents, and creativity. That's why the arts are indispensable. They awaken curiosity, they strengthen resilience, and draw us into the beauty of truth. In my own life, music has been a lifeline, a way of touching the divine. It connects us, it heals us, and it opens us to the mystery. So, what is our task? Catholic higher education must embrace AI with discernment. Technology must remain a servant, never a master. Our mission is not to form only workers for the marketplace, but people of wisdom, creativity, and holiness. AI will go on, is here to stay, but whether it elevates or it diminishes humanity depends on how we respond. If Catholic universities remain rooted in wisdom, human dignity, and holistic formation, we can show the world that authentic education is never about efficiency alone. It's about communion, creativity, and sanctity. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jen Sanders. I'm the Director of Catholic Studies here at SLU. Thank you to Dr. Beabout and to this wonderful panel, especially Grace. What a joy to hear from a student of ours. Thank you. So I begin with a confession. I have always limited technology in my courses, and I am skeptical of incorporating AI into a liberal arts education too rapidly. Will it support human formation or further education as a form of credentialing? I remain unconvinced by arguments that say we must be practical when it comes to incorporating AI in education. AI can have benefits, it can even be a tool, but as a humanities professor, I prefer to discuss AI with students, evaluate AI-produced essays, and reflect upon what can be lost in relying on AI to ease the struggles of reading and writing. As a scholar of Thomas Aquinas and Bernard Lonergan, I wonder about what human intelligence is. Human intelligence invites self-sacrifice and self-transcendence, which require time, personal risk, and encounter. To even impart the word intelligence to a form of technology introduces immediate confusion. As Antigua et Nova makes clear, what is called artificial intelligence can only mimic human cognitive processes. And the reason we call this technology intelligent is not because of its process, but because of its products. Unfortunately, we as a culture and as an educational system can uncritically privilege the product over the process. Yet there is a new opportunity. Through encounters with AI, the wider culture is now asking a question Catholicism has been considering for millennia. What does it mean to be human? A chance to dialogue is here. As Dr. Beabout has highlighted, Pope Leo XIV primarily chose his name because developments in the field of AI posed challenges similar to those of the Industrial Revolution during Leo XIII's papacy. I'd like to reflect on another papal name, Benedict XVI, which Joseph Ratzinger chose especially because of Saint Benedict, the father of Western monasticism. According to Benedict XVI, in the midst of the so-called Dark Ages, monasteries preserved the treasures of ancient culture and cultivated a new culture. But this was not their intention. Benedict makes a startling claim, quote, "What gave Europe's culture its foundation was the search for God and the readiness to listen to him. And this remains today the basis of any genuine culture," end quote. Searching and listening for God is the basis of culture. This process, not any product, is the key. As Catholic novelist Walker Percy observes, up until the modern period, the West understood this process as a pilgrimage. But with modern science also came a scientism that brought about what Percy called the loss of the creature and the loss of sovereignty over the self. We become, for Percy, consumer selves, which eclipses our experience of our pilgrimhood and compromises our existential autonomy. For Percy, novel writing was an exercise in hope, undertaken to help us recover our pilgrim identity and embark on the search. If the advent of AI is analogous to the Industrial Revolution with respect to dignity, justice, and labor, might the dawning of AI with respect to the proliferation of products which accustom us, quote, to desire only what a machine can give, end quote, and eclipse human intelligence, set the conditions for another dark age. A dark age of extraordinary technological light, but an eclipse of the interior light that makes us human. I am being deliberately provocative, in part because I want to accentuate the opportunities for Catholic universities in positively contributing to our culture, not simply by sharing Catholic anthropology, but by developing it in the face of new questions. The Vatican II document, Gaudium et Spes, famously said, quote, "Only in the mystery of the incarnate word does the mystery of man take on light," end quote. The opportunity to search and listen is arising. We know the story. College attendance is decreasing. Institutional trust in higher education has declined. The liberal arts are crumbling and have struggled to meaningfully influence the cultural and political conversation. Will AI be the final nail in the coffin? I don't think so. Students are cautious about AI. They have many questions, and they wonder what impact it will have on their future. Their caution makes sense, given that their generation has been, as Jonathan Haidt puts it, overprotected in the physical world and underprotected in the digital world. I am witnessing in higher education an opportunity for a return to the liberal arts. And in my students, I find renewed interest in searching for what it means to be human and what we are made for. With Antiqua et Nova, I believe Catholic universities must cultivate hope that human life is meaningful. The philosopher Russell Hittinger suggests that the Benedictine vow of stability was the most important vow for the Dark Ages, because it taught people, quote, how to live life as a whole when forces of disintegration and confusion abounded, end quote. In our age, what concerns me is the interior disintegration that can accompany technology, from social media to AI. These technologies can make us feel small, insignificant, redundant, and think something like transhumanism is the answer. Like the monasteries of the Dark Ages, Catholic universities can become places of stability as civilization undergoes rapid changes because of AI. Catholic universities should be places where students can go on the pilgrim search for what it means to be human and how to live a life, where they can preserve their humanity, engage the mystery of suffering, and sow the seeds of a new culture. This is the work we try to do here in Catholic Studies at SLU. We have been gifted with a place, what Percy would call a some place, rather than a no place. This place invites students to search for God in the classroom, the dining room, the office, the chapel. This place incarnates the experience of the integrated whole of a truly human life: social, intellectual, moral, spiritual. This place is sacramental. It makes visible this invisible wholeness. This place has a rhythm and an order. It provides the stability a young person needs to be able to raise and answer the questions that take time, the questions that demand self-sacrifice and self-transcendence, the questions that are answered not by producing or even by speaking, but by listening. the questions that are answered not with products, papers, exams, but with one's very life. Thank you.
We've got some time for questions. I've got a portable microphone if you have a question.
I just want to take this time to thank all of you for your discernment on this very important topic. So in light of Pope Leo the 14th, indicating that Cardinal Newman will be named the 38th Doctor of the Church, I wanted to take this time to ask each of you the following question. Newman, in the idea of a university, argued that the university should provide an integrated formation of knowledge with theology as its unifying principle, or the queen of the sciences. Given the rise of artificial intelligence and its implications in higher learning, do you think it is possible to recover that vision of integration in the modern liberal arts university, or has AI made such a model unattainable?
Well done. I tend to think it makes humanities more accessible. And in that sense, along with Newman's idea of the university, Newman's idea of the university was to defend education as opposed to technical training. Now, I have another colleague in the room who we've had conversations about this point, but we're coming out of a very weird 20 years or so, I think. And I don't want to go on too much further on this, but I just want to make this quick point. Our young people, I apologize to them for giving them phones, because I did that, with my kids. I'm like, I'm sorry I did that. Shouldn't have done that. But one of the other things that has happened over the last 20 years is education itself has changed dramatically. And that's writ large, I think. And we're starting to see the outcomes of that, where education, yes, Jay, I'm talking about you, where we talk about education as outcome and product, the whole no child left behind kind of thing. And I think what we're starting to see now is that in some ways that has not been a very effective way of helping kids to grow. Now, as it relates to AI, though, I'd say there's an opportunity more than anything with that. Sorry, I went on too long. If anyone else, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have.
I'll jump in here. I think of it a little differently in the sense that AI is a tool and there are different ways to use that tool. And I'll give you two different ways to think about it. If I look at recent graduates, what we're finding is that AI neutralizes sort of technical advantages, knowing information, knowing knowledge. And the firms that are hiring students care much more about their humanistic skills, about their relationship to people. And so there's a bit of a counterintuitive dynamic in terms of the labor market, that AI may actually be causing our communities to think more carefully about developing their humanistic dimensions. Along that line, I just released a book with a co-author where we looked at how AI can be used in a very particular way to form what we called a companion. We made up a name, we call it an avaspar, which is an avatar and a sparring partner. And used a particular way, it can reflect who you imagine you can become. It's driven by your reflection. And we think it has the potential to enable and accelerate formation over a lifetime. This is not to replace human beings, not to replace educators. It's to provide a mirror that might be difficult for you to see otherwise. So I don't want to, when I don't subscribe to a blanket statement that AI is going to substitute for our humanity. It could, but we can also choose to use it in a different way, thoughtfully, with various frameworks and parameters around it, if we choose to do so.
Did anybody else wish to comment? Okay, so my comment, I don't know if there's a question in here, but as you all were talking, I was thinking of the movie called Hidden Figures. And I'm sure many of us have seen that. And a couple of lines from there struck me as we were listening. One is that maybe it's not new math that we're trying to figure out. Maybe it's old math, meaning it's old thoughts, older, wiser thoughts that are no longer needing calculators and slide rules and abacuses and things like that, but it's the humanistic creativity to take the new tool as far as we can make it go. We kind of, if you also think about the Industrial Revolution as a model, as many of us talked about, we took things as far as they can go, and then we needed to adapt and change. And maybe the calculator went as far as it could go, and now we're having another tool. But I was also struck by a line in the movie that said, the important thing for NASA to do is to find the genius among geniuses, to find the humans among the humans, to find the critical thinkers among the critical thinkers, and to integrate all of that humanity into a goal. And John Glenn trusted Catherine before he trusted a computer. And I think maybe that's what it's always going to be coming down to. So I don't know if that's a comment or a question, or if anybody has any thoughts.
I can offer one response if no one else has one. So we've thought about this issue in this book I mentioned, and we came up with a silly little acronym. We call it AHA. And AHA is about making sure that we as humans try to formulate what the challenge and what the opportunity is, and that we as humans try to come up with an approach, a solution approach, a strategy, if you will. And then only then appeal to AI to push us, to test us, to expand our imagination. And we conclude with going back to being the human who ultimately has to determine the answer. So it's always human first, human second, that's the A and the H, AI third, that's the second A, and then human last. That if we think about how we want to proceed, how we want to deliberate, how we want to think, then in some ways it's a way to marry the technology, but always putting the human first and last.
I'll just add one comment to that, because I think there ties back to the first question. What worries me most about AI from a teaching and learning standpoint is it requires a great subtlety in teaching in terms of the pedagogy and helping students understand pedagogy. Because what Jackson just described there requires a very deliberate conversation with a student about how to use AI deftly so that they don't actually undercut their own learning. And this is a kind of teaching that I fear, especially in a world in which we're desperate to scale teaching, make it more efficient, deliver it to more people at lower cost, et cetera, which is going to be very difficult to deliver. I don't want to sound overly pessimistic. I think it actually calls on us to be stronger educators, but it is not an insignificant challenge.
Good afternoon. My name's Sam. I'm a senior here at SLU, and I'm studying business and Catholic studies. And kind of in that vein, I've had the opportunity here at SLU to study a business degree, which has provided me with the opportunity to learn top-tier financial business acumen, practical leadership skills, and what I will need to do when I go out into the workforce. Having my Catholic studies degree as well has helped me to learn about reading, writing, critical thinking. It's helped me to discern and understand who I am and what my purposes and passions are. And I think I'm not unique in this respect at SLU. I think SLU is very uniquely positioned to offer both a great return on investment for a degree and also to form people who know who they are, who have a well-rounded education, I think, through our university core. I think SLU and Jesuit education has a responsibility to provide a return on investment on a degree for students. Students are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in this education, and I think Jesuit education has promoted leaders in all fields, business, law, and medicine over the years. And if we do not provide students who are ready to go meet those challenges of the pressing issues of the time, I think we as a Jesuit institution would be failing what our calling is. There's also, I think, something to be said for the liberal arts, for a holistic undergraduate education, for SLU's core, for the humanities. There's been a lot of media attention kind of recently in the past year about how large consulting firms in the United States are hiring more undergraduate students with humanities degrees because they have the critical thinking skills to address complex business problems, and then these firms can teach the employees the actual kind of knowledge and business acumen that they're going to need. So I think that's interesting, and I think SLU has an opportunity as the advent of AI continues. People will be asking more of these questions of what it means to be human, what it means to be a person. And so I guess just my question for anyone here on the panel is, I think SLU has a responsibility, and I think Jesuit education understands we need to both move forward and remember who we are. But how do we balance these two things, I think, is my question. Thank you.
Dr. Fazer?
I don't know that I have a ready answer, but I don't disagree. So I think what makes me optimistic about the kind of institution we are is that we ought to be the place that can figure out what you just described. But I think this is going to require a level of thought that most of our institutions have not undertaken yet. I don't have an easy answer to your question.
Could I just throw in a couple thoughts on it? I mean, I think one of the problems that we really face right now is that the technology is moving very quickly. And the technology is moving quickly while people scratch their heads about it. Now, I'm not saying everybody's got to jump on board with it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to understand what AI is and how it's developing and how fast it's developing and what's potentially coming in 6 months or a year. And from everything that I've seen and heard from folks who are working in that business, it's going to be an unprecedented. It's not stopping. Now, and I take your point, though, about training people in the humanities and training people to be critical thinkers. But we also have to acknowledge that there's going to be a whole level of jobs that aren't going to be available very shortly. And we're already starting to see that in entry-level type jobs that are now not being filled. And again, I don't have an answer either, but it's something that this is the kind of forum where we need to start talking about this because that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's a huge challenge, I think. It has implications all over the place.
I'm glad I had a few seconds to think about it. Thank you, Sam. You mentioned that you are in finance, and so I'm going to use some finance terminology. The beauty of SLU is that we can take a portfolio approach. Not everyone has to adopt these methodologies all at the same time or ever. As long as we have a portfolio where some are advancing, they're in the arena, they're trying to figure it out, and others are choosing not to, that is perfectly okay. It doesn't have to be a holistic, monolithic approach. It can be a much more diversified approach. If we're not in the arena figuring it out, then we can't make progress and we may not be serving our students well. On the other hand, if we have other areas that are working really well, particularly in terms of the humanistic side, there may not be a need to experiment there so rapidly. So as long as we conceptualize this as a portfolio, I think we are well positioned to move forward as an institution.
So it's always good to have a little more time. Listening to these responses reminds me of a conversation I was in a year or two ago on education nationally in STEM. And we were all gathered in Boise, Idaho, at Micron's facility as both, this was during the Biden administration, educators and federal folks, and we were talking about how you scale up STEM education in the United States, deliver more degrees at lower cost, et cetera. And the problem with that dialogue is I think what you're getting to is a matter of slowing down and reducing scale to do this well. And the problem becomes the value for money question. And as I was sitting in that conversation in Idaho, I was thinking to myself that we should actually be thinking about these technologies and our capacity to be efficient, et cetera, in the sense of making it possible for more people to learn at smaller scales than at larger ones. So the reverse of the Arizona State model, if you will. We certainly have the wealth and capacity to do that, but nobody is putting that framing on the table. So when you're thinking about value for money, I think, and you think about the pace at which things are transpiring, and you read some of the dialogue on AI from AI experts themselves who have advocated either stopping, halting development for a period or slowing it down. I think there's a lot to be said for a more open conversation about learning how to use AI effectively in some of the ways we've talked about at a smaller scale, at a slower pace. That's a choice, I'll come back to my comments on democratic deliberation, we could talk about. We don't have to be necessarily societally bound to a model that's driving us at a frenetic pace. I realize there's a lot of political economic challenges in that statement, but we're not even talking about that in a significant way.
Yeah, Lou Cheng-Li, again, great discussions here. The first part probably have some comments regarding pedagogy, influence or impact on pedagogy and curriculum, etc., because of AI. But I'd like to go back to Professor Sanders, because you referred multiple times regarding the monastery or dark age. Then if you recall, dark age or medieval time, the Bible or teaching and learning all happened in monasteries. That's where the monks actually copied the Bible or through calligraphy to preserve knowledge, right? To preserve knowledge. But then after the Charlemagne, the printing came out to be the big influence, the process of preserving knowledge changed dramatically for the Bible, for the impact in their society. So if you have a parallel comparing that transformation and also formation for the monks through their learning, etc., but compare that to today's AI technology and learning, what do we get out of that? As you refer to, the early days, God dwells in nature in monasteries. That's where the monasteries were built in far distance in the mountains, etc. And even the modern American thinker, Emerson, still thinks at that time, God dwells in nature in the woods. That's what he said, right? So that today, if you look at, as you said, end up with your panel discussion, God can be found in the dining halls. It can be outside the classroom, can be outside the typical places. So with that, if we all agree that learning can happen, formation can happen beyond the typical classroom, beyond the typical teaching, learning, and the curriculum and the pedagogy, where might we find this new path with the AI impact, the new technological influence impact professors or students? How does that formation happen looking forward, if we make that comparison?
I think of this idea from Marshall McLuhan, who is here at SLU as well. The medium is the message. And one thing I think of as a student of Lonergan, a student of Aquinas, is they talk a lot about what they would call the role of phantasms in learning. What's the role of embodiment? What's the role of the material in precipitating human understanding. Now, the thing that human understanding brings to the table from this perspective is inquiry or wonder, as Father Thomas was talking about. And so the questions that I think about with AI is, to what extent does changing the sort of typical material of a humanities education, from books, writing, in-person conversations, to something more artificial, how does that change how we understand? Now, we're always going to understand in the same way. There's going to be the same process, start to finish, so to speak, from experience to understanding to judging to making decisions. But how does that engagement with technology affect the process, potentially in positive ways? I don't think that AI is necessarily inimical to education. I'm not saying that by any means, but I think that, kind of to the earlier point, Lonergan will say something along the lines, and this is perhaps something he gets from Socrates, is learning how to live takes time, and living runs ahead of learning how to live. And so the thing that I'm concerned with is, can we slow down long enough to figure out how to learn to live with AI? And if we can't slow down long enough, where is our agency in that? So I don't know if that directly answers the question, but I want to think more about, what does the change in the material or the phantasm do to the process of learning? Does it help? Does it hinder? Does it transform consciousness in a new way, which I think is a very real possibility? Yeah.
I think one of the things to think about here is, in terms of the transmission of knowledge, is that maybe from, say, 400 to 1500, levels of literacy in Europe didn't change. So with all these, little bumps and rises of advances in knowledge, monasteries, universities, by and large, it didn't change. The printing press was a much more fundamental change as a machine, you might say. And one of the outcomes of that, of course, is the Protestant Reformation, the scientific revolution, and so I think we got to be careful about what analogies we want to draw. And I know it's hard because we're deep in this right now. The printing press opening literacy to a wider body of people is comparable to where we're at now. There, as I'm looking in the room here, there are people in this room like me who had encyclopedias. And my mom and dad went to Schnucks and bought a new Encyclopedia Britannica every month. Not the whole thing, but a volume every month. Hey, it's S month. And we were the only people on our block that had an encyclopedia, so we were lending it all the time in South St. Louis, like a monastery. Now, boy, they don't print them anymore. It's a technological change. The internet has now become a change, but that's a 20-year change in some ways. We've only been dealing with that for 20 years, and now we're experiencing this other change that, again, is a fundamental different way of understanding information. Again, I don't have an answer for any of this. I'm just saying that it is a very, very significant challenge for us.
Yes, I would like to amplify the voice of strengthening the pedagogy. As the president said, these Catholic institutions have wonderful pedagogies designed, like the Jesuit model of teaching, imbued with the reflective practices for students. I am a teaching assistant in the School of Education. I teach leadership and service, but we help our students before they get out of the class. We leave that moment, like 10 minutes of journaling, physical journaling of their thoughts, what we have shared in class, and that can draw back in an evolved way, in an AI understanding of the monastic life, how it is. That is an improved way of reflecting and understanding what they have learned in an environment which helps them do that. And on the other hand, the Jesuit model also emphasizes the peace of service. We are very tough on service, and we advise our students to get all those service hours, the service places where they go, and that helps them to know that leadership begins from the need of the other. That transmits what they're learning, how it can help the common good, how it can help the people on the margins, how it can help the service of the community at large. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Grant Kaplan. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Theological Studies. Thank you so much for all your thoughts on the panel. Pope Leo is an Augustinian monk, and I wanted to recall one of Augustine's more controversial ideas and ask particular Dr. Sanders to reflect on it. But the idea is that when he tried to understand the Trinity, that the human mind was an analogy to the triune life of God. And the radical implication is that when the human mind is at work, we are in fact participating in the life of God. And if we give this up, what a tremendous loss it would be for us. And so I think one of the reasons students like to use AI, and other people do as well, is because they have the wrong model of the human mind. They think the human mind is like a machine, so why not let a machine do our thinking for us? It's a perfectly logical circle. And so I wanted to ask you, especially in light of what you said about Lonergan, but perhaps a couple other people on the panel, perhaps Dr. Fazer, what are we going to do at SLU to give a proper understanding of what the human mind is to students? What kind of space are we going to create so that they do not come out of SLU after 4 years thinking that the human mind is just like a machine?
Thank you, Grant. I'll share just a little quote from Lonergan, which maybe corresponds to this, in his Verbum articles, which is his book on the Trinity and what it is that makes us in the image of God. Says, people, perhaps somebody like Scotus, would think of the mind as a black box. It's just a metaphysical sausage machine producing concepts. Lonergan is becoming increasingly relevant, I believe, because he is somebody who thinks about what human knowing is. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think Antiqua et Nova does a really good job in pointing out the differences between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. I think there's also room for it to develop in drawing on the more recent tradition in terms of human cognition. What do we do? I don't know what to do as a university as a whole. I think, again, this is where the opportunity for the humanities is here. And I think if we pay attention to our students, they're asking for it. They're asking for those questions. We'd have to check with my students how well this works. I don't teach Lonergan in any of my classes, really, but I'm constantly using his understanding of understanding to inform my pedagogy. And I think there's a lot of room at Jesuit universities to consider this question of pedagogy in connection to the question of what it means to know, what we're doing when we're understanding. And we have a wonderful Jesuit resource in Bernard Lonergan to think about that. And we also, I think you're right, in focusing here on the Trinity. There's really not only an opportunity to think about what it means to be human, but also that what it means to be human is connected in some way to what it means to be God. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ed Sabin. I'm a member of the psychology department. First, a comment. I want to thank Greg Beabout for organizing this panel on an essentially important topic. And I look forward for the ones to come, as well as the distinguished presentations today. My question is this: what can the university do to ensure faculty are prepared to deal with AI next year and especially 5 years from now when remarkable transformations in artificial intelligence are expected? In short, how do we make sure we're the master and not the slave?
I suppose I'll answer that. With the proviso that I've now been here a little over 2 months, and so I'm still understanding what we're actually doing to help our faculty understand this, I think we have to teach our faculty some of the very concepts that we've talked about here. And this note, as Dr. Sanders mentions, does a wonderful job of describing the difference between human and artificial intelligence, or what I like to sometimes call digital intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. I don't see a substitute for educating ourselves on these fundamentals and then going from there. And so how we do that is up to us as a faculty to decide. I would argue, based on the previous question, the same conversation has to be had with students. This is how your mind works. This is why you should use AI in a particular way and not another way. Jackson described a manner that I've experimented with myself. If I advance ideas and get them down on paper, and I have all the fundamental ideas there, and then I use a tool like AI to explore my thinking, it adds value. If I shortcut my way to an attempted result, you can see where AI is actually likely to diminish my thinking over time if I used it too much that way. I don't see a substitute for educating ourselves as faculty and then educating our students on these basic ideas, and we need to make time in our curriculum to do that. I think if we do it, we create value of the kind that Sam talked about.
I'll offer a tactical response. Last June in the business school, we launched 3 different committees in an AI initiative. One committee was focused on trying to bring together different approaches to AI, where we had a faculty team that educated other faculty. And in fact, we did this and recorded all of it. So if you're interested, I'm happy to share that with anyone and everyone to see how faculty are thinking about AI. And we went through a series of training sessions, even as I think 2.5 weeks ago was the most recent one. That was one committee. The second committee was tasked with coming up with how AI changes pedagogy. And so they worked all summer to look at different approaches, and we've come up with a set of things that here again, the faculty are educating the faculty. The third committee I ran, which was with our colleagues from IT, to come up with a platform that would satisfy a set of design requirements to ensure privacy, cybersecurity, a way to track critical thinking so we would understand the ways in which students are using AI. What we have not done is this last part, is to find a way to help educate students about how we intend for them to learn and what is in their best interest. I hope we'll have something for that next fall. These were the tactical approaches that we've done in the school, all of which we're happy to share across the university.
Next month, our panel will be on AI and its impact on healthcare. Please join me in thanking our panelists for a wonderful discussion.